Husband chaperoned our kids' scout trip with a parent accused of being his secret wife, and I can't shake the suspicion of their affair. I'm a 42-year-old woman, and right now my mind just can't settle. My husband, who's also 42, is away for the weekend chaperoning our kids on a scout outing, and even though I want to get on with my day, I can't shake the storm of unease brewing inside me. I keep cycling through this gut feeling that something's not right, specifically, that he's having an affair with another parent, a woman in the troop who's 43. Both of our older kids, our 14-year-old son and 12-year-old daughter, are in scouts together, and she's been around for years now, ever since her family moved here about 7 years ago. We've been married for 15 years, together for 17, and we have 3 amazing kids, 14M, 12F, 8M. Until this week, not once did I truly feel like my husband could be unfaithful to me. That was, until this month's parent meeting, when another parent's remark hit me like a punch in the gut. The comment, though I can't recall the exact wording, was basically that, if she didn't know better, she'd think my husband and this other mom were married. And this isn't the first time these sorts of comments have come up. My husband told me about them before, although back then, they seemed like harmless jokes. For whatever reason, because the comments weren't made in front of me, I never let them get under my skin. But hearing it firsthand, it triggered something deep inside me, a gnawing doubt that I just can't talk myself out of. Now, even the smallest detail feels suspect. The other parent, the woman in question, is married too, although I don't know much about her husband. I've never seen him at any awards nights, band concerts, or school events. She's dropped a few comments over the years that have made me wonder about the health of her own marriage as well. And as leaders in the troop, my husband and she have had to spend a lot of time together. For a while, due to scheduling conflicts with other adults, they were almost always the only two available for outings and long camp trips. I know 2 adults are required for every scouting event, so if the 2 of them didn't go, none of our kids or anyone else's would get to participate. There have been entire summers where it was just the 2 of them leading 4 scouts during the week-long camps. The logistics made sense, but now all I can think about are the opportunities they had to grow close. She's pinned at the top of his phone contacts, alongside me and our children, because they coordinate so much for scouts. All the messages seem to be about activities, scheduling, badges, and kids stuff. His contact list looks normal. He isn't prioritizing her above his own family, at least not visibly. But that reassurance suddenly doesn't feel as solid as it did before. Recently, more leaders joined the troop, most of them women. My husband gets along with all of them, but it's this one in particular, that keeps drawing attention. It seems to be other women, the new leaders, who keep making those little jokes about the 2 of them being an old married couple. And now, in the quiet left in my husband's absence, all those comments echo in my head and leave me spinning with worry. Last night, I tried talking to my sister, she's 40 and married, thinking she might help talk me down. All she did was fan the flames. In fact, she encouraged me to push for an open marriage, like hers, apparently, and offered to be my wingman if I did. But I don't want that. I want reassurance, or answers, anything but this endless pit of doubt and suspicion clawing at my insides. Update 1. My husband texted me this morning, suggesting we have a movie date night together when he gets back tomorrow. Now, movie nights for us almost always end on a steamy note, and as much as I want to enjoy the closeness, there's something I can't shake. His comment the other day really bothered me, and I'm determined to talk to him about how it made me feel before we fall back into our usual routine. I've been thinking about how to approach it. He's joked about these sorts of things before, but this time, hearing it directly and not as a passing joke twisted my thoughts and sent me spiraling. I know I'm being a little cautious, or maybe more than a little. I'm not comfortable blurting it out and flat out asking if he's having an affair. But honestly, aside from those scout meetings, he's home every single night, and when he's at the meetings, our kids are usually right there with him. So, rationally, I know there probably isn't anything going on. But my mind still spins. And then there's this parent, the one who had me raising my eyebrows. Thankfully, she's not on this weekend's outing. I checked her Facebook, and her posts confirm she's nowhere near the event. That takes a weight off my mind for now. One thing I don't want people to get wrong, my husband isn't keeping me away from the troop. In fact, he's been urging me to get more involved for a while. Some of the other leaders from the girls' troop, since they merged for the pilot, have also encouraged me. No one's shutting me out. Still, with everything swirling in my head, I need to sit down with him and lay my feelings on the table, no matter how awkward it might be. Update 2. It's not that I can't talk to my husband. We've never really struggled with communication before, but I find myself hesitating, dreading the idea of bringing something up that's purely a gut feeling, without any proof whatsoever. The last thing I want is to ask him outright if he's having an affair and accidentally set off a chain reaction I can't control, just because I let suspicion get the best of me. I remember how it was when I was 15, watching the fallout between my parents. My mom confronted my dad with nothing but a suspicion. There was no evidence, no real reason, just a nagging feeling she couldn't let go of. He hadn't cheated. Still, that accusation shattered them. It poisoned everything, and soon both of them spiraled, betraying each other in ways they never had before. The way my family split apart left scars. My sister isn't the same, my mom is still bitter. I don't want my life to mirror theirs. So no, it's not communication that's the problem between me and my husband. I just can't risk asking him in a way that makes me sound accusatory or paranoid, especially when there's nothing concrete, just my own anxious thoughts churning late at night. There's so much more at stake than just the question itself. Update 3. My anxiety was through the roof on Friday night when I couldn't shake the gut feeling that my husband was having an affair. This unease gnawed at me all night, and though I tried to rationalize it away, my heart kept pounding right up until I fell into a restless sleep. I had already scheduled a vacation day for myself since I needed to use up some time before the end of the year, so I decided to seize the opportunity to confront my fears and untangle the knots in my stomach. Some context might help. I'd been more involved in scouting when my oldest was a Cub Scout, working side by side with my husband. But after my son crossed over into Boy Scouts, the time commitment spiked, plus, I never got my driver's license, so my husband took over shuttle duties. He genuinely wants me to be more active, especially now that our troop is mixed gender and our daughter has joined. But my job keeps me constantly underwater. I teach a 4K program at a private childcare center, and this year especially has been a challenge, with a new curriculum, fresh assessments for every kid, and a lively bunch who need more time and patience than ever. Most nights, I'm up long after midnight, hunched over lesson plans and prepping for tomorrow's chaos. My husband reassures me to take it easy, since I'm not paid for half the work I do after hours, but he still supports me, running errands, surprising me with coffee or lunch, even picking up classroom library books for me. Questions about intimacy have lingered at the edge of my mind. Honestly, I feel my needs are being met, but I wasn't so sure about his. Over the past few years, his sex drive has definitely increased. A while back, he struggled with some health issues and got put on blood pressure meds. He worked hard to get off of them, lost weight, got more active. But let me clarify, he doesn't hit a gym. Everything happens right in our basement, on the treadmill or with dumbbells. He's never complained about our sex life. He knows my reluctance for spontaneity, and with 3 kids and an all-consuming job, it isn't as simple as it used to be. But truthfully, I'm happy with what we have. This was all swirling in my mind while my husband and our 2 oldest kids were away on a weekend scout outing. When they finally got back late Saturday afternoon, I knew I had to do something. Before I could even talk to him, the troop scoutmaster called about shirt sizes for the new activity shirts. My husband was out of cell range, so I picked up. As we talked, I worked up the nerve to bring up how the married couple jokes between my husband and another parent made me uncomfortable. She understood and admitted she's been trying to put a stop to those comments. When I asked about my husband and this other parent, she assured me their relationship was more like siblings than spouses. Sure, they joke around, sometimes sit together at meals, but she hadn't ever witnessed flirting or anything remotely improper between them. Later that night, I finally talked to my husband. I told him those married couple comments bothered me, and he immediately understood, saying he hated them too. He knows my anxiety sometimes gets the better of me. Then I asked the question that had been clawing at my insides: could I look through his phone? Without hesitation, he handed it over. Their text history was nothing but scouting discussions, book swaps, the occasional tip on hiking gear, and one string about some car trouble she'd had last year, nothing remotely suspicious. He went further, pulling open his other apps for me to see. He used Slack and WhatsApp for work before his layoff, but they contained nothing but brief exchanges with former coworkers. His Signal app was locked with Face ID, but he opened it for me. Again, only innocent conversations with a couple of coworkers. He showed me his iPad and Kindle Next. I discovered he has a fondness for cozy romance novels, essentially Hallmark movies in print. On our date nights, we often end up watching Hallmark movies together, but I never realized how deep his love for those sweet, simple stories ran. He's even extra careful about checking book summaries to avoid anything overly graphic, having been caught off guard before. After all that, a burning question, ignited by my spinning thoughts and some things I'd read, slipped out. I asked if he masturbated. He didn't hesitate. He does, and it's always in the shower, which explained his lengthy showers perfectly. Then I blurted out, "Who do you think about?" His answer: "Mostly me, but occasionally 2 celebrities, one a late 90s pop star turned actress who voiced a Disney princess, the other a violinist." Then, after an awkward pause, he admitted he'd had a fantasy about the other parent. I'm not sure what made me press further, but the next question just escaped: was he attracted to her? Silence lingered for a moment before he admitted that he was, but he assured me he'd recognize those feelings quickly and put up solid boundaries, kept their conversations strictly scouting or book related, avoided ever being alone with her, and only treated her as a friend. He recalled he'd only ever been to her house to pick her son up for events, always waiting in the driveway. Outside of scouting, their interaction was nearly non-existent, even when we crossed paths at school events. And then he looked me in the eyes and told me he was, by far, more attracted to me than to anyone else. My husband told me that he cares about me more than anyone else and he's made a conscious choice to only act on the feelings he has for me. Because I had asked him if he's ever been attracted to anyone else, he turned the question back to me. I admitted that I do think I'm attracted to the parent of one of the kids I teach. He knows these interactions are limited, just quick 5-minute conversations during the chaos of drop-off and pickup, nothing more. I don't even connect with any of the parents on social media until after their children are no longer in my class. He didn't try to make me feel guilty. In fact, he only asked because I had brought it up first. But this is where my mind keeps going. I feel insecure. That other parent reminds me so much of how I used to look before I had kids. She's skinny, she runs marathons, backpacks, and she shares a few of my husband's interests. Sometimes I can't help but compare myself, and it stings. Still, my husband is always enthusiastic about spending time with me. He goes out of his way to meet my needs. He is home with me every single night, and has always kept his location sharing on for me, so I always know where he is. It's just hard to shake off those insecurities, even when he's done everything right. Update 4. Honesty in marriage, especially when it comes to answering direct questions, is a double-edged sword. Sometimes, the truth stings. My husband and I are married, not blind. We both notice attractive people. It's inevitable. I know for a fact that he finds certain celebrities attractive, because I've asked. That doesn't faze me. He's never likely to cross paths with them, and even if he did, I trust him completely. He's not the cheating type. Still, I draw a line. I don't want to know if he's attracted to someone we both know, a mutual acquaintance. I'm well aware that some of them are very attractive, but I never want to hear him say it out loud. I don't ask, and I don't worry, because I trust him. I try to remind myself to let these things go. Sure, we both see other appealing people, but none of them compare to the person with whom I've built my life. Not in the ways that truly matter. Things got more complicated when we started talking about attraction. He once asked me if I found anyone else attractive, and I admitted I was attracted to a parent of one of my students. But there's a gulf of difference between that and what he's experiencing. For him, it isn't just idle acknowledgement. He pictured me in his shoes. Imagine if it were a work colleague I spent time alone with, eating lunches together, texting, even if innocently, all while nurturing not so innocent sexual fantasies and even masturbating to those thoughts. That's a whole different territory, one that stops being simply finding someone attractive and enters something much grayer. I don't think he's cheating, but this situation treads dangerously close to emotional infidelity. There's even a book, Not Just Friends by Shirley Glass, which dives deep into the concept. Our minds have a powerful ability to create intimacy with whatever we reinforce, especially sexually. When Scouting America launched its mixed-gender pilot last year, the current troop formed. My husband and this other parent stood out as the most active leaders in the boys' troop, often the only two adults available to chaperone the boys on campouts. For almost 2 years, they worked closely together, so closely that rumors swirled about them being a married couple. My husband told me those jokes started because they got along so well, but the first time I heard one of those comments made in front of me, it hit differently. The lines between friendly partnership and something more were blurred by the way others talked, even if nothing happened. For me, noticing attractiveness is normal. But you rarely have to establish hard boundaries with someone you only find attractive. The fact that he felt compelled to create boundaries with her, and chose not to discuss those boundaries or what was happening with me, makes the situation murky. He pushed things a step further, fantasizing about her sexually, even masturbating to those thoughts. For me, that's a hard line. I don't think he needs to quit as scoutmaster or cut her from his life, or even be unfriendly to her. But he needs to stop sitting next to her at every meal, and, absolutely, he can't keep fueling those fantasies. More than anything, we need open conversations about this. No more secrets, no more letting things fester in the dark. Update 5. The numbness and shock I felt after my husband admitted to having fantasies about another woman, a parent and co-leader in our kids' scout troop, are starting to wear off. Now I'm just angry. Angry at him for ever making me feel unsafe in our marriage. On one hand, I wish he'd never confessed to harboring this fantasy about her. I do believe him when he says he never acted on his attraction physically. I believe he tried to limit the time they were together, but ultimately, it was never enough. He found himself as the only other adult to chaperone certain outings. If he'd pulled back, the whole troop would have suffered because they were the only two leaders. Even so, just because he kept it in his head and acted it out alone in our shower, it doesn't change the feeling for me. It feels like cheating. I don't care if it was once or 100 times, or what exactly played out in his head. He still broke my trust. He was the only person I had dared to be that vulnerable with, and now there are 1,000 cracks in everything we built. I feel furious, too, because there's a part of me, a little insidious voice, that nags I should just open up our marriage a sliver, let him have this woman, as long as they are discreet. Apparently, he needs more than I can give, if what he does alone in the shower is any clue. I hate that the voice sounds just like my sister, echoing in my head, making me question if this is somehow my fault or if I'm somehow broken or undeserving. But mostly, my anger burns at myself. Why didn't I see the signs that he needed firmer boundaries? Why didn't I get involved sooner? My anxiety has pushed me to repeat the mistakes my parents made. I almost started down the same path, letting my own vulnerability open a door to an emotional affair. Someone online to me after my first post and shared all about their affair, making me feel safe enough to overshare. They started asking about the parent I was attracted to, whether I'd consider an affair, if I ever fantasized about him. Certain things from my parents' divorce have always made intimacy tricky for me, including even masturbation. But ever since my husband's confession, I found myself thinking about that parent more. I even broke my own rule and connected with him on Facebook, even though I have his kid in my class. I crossed my own boundaries, let myself think about things I never would have considered before, and that makes me angriest of all. I can't believe I'm headed for the same mistakes. I told my husband I need space and time to process all of this. He needs to step back from scouting for now. He can stay registered so he doesn't need to redo the background check later, but it's time for others to pick up the load. He needs to take a break. And you know what? I've realized I need a therapist. I'm already searching for one, along with a marriage counselor and a copy of that Shirley Glass book. I never saw myself standing in this place, feeling the earthquake beneath my marriage. Maybe one day, if I zoom out far enough, if he were gone tomorrow, I'd see how small this all was. But right now, for me, it's everything. Update 6. Two things happened almost at the same time, and together they snapped me out of that frozen, numb place I'd been living in. My husband sent an email to the Scoutmaster stepping back from leadership for personal reasons, and I got a text from an unknown number that just said, "Is everything okay?" Rumors are flying. When I asked who it was, it turned out to be one of the new leaders from the merged girls troop. She said someone had already started whispering that I'd made my husband quit because of the other mom. That phrase, "made him quit," made my chest go hot. I don't control him, and I hate the way other people's versions of our life evolve without us. I asked her to stop the talk whenever she heard it, and I told her the truth. He needed a break, and so did I. The Scoutmaster called and asked gently if there was more to it. I told her there was, but it wasn't her mess to mop up. She didn't press. Instead, she asked if I'd be comfortable if she shuffled coverage so there were always 3 adults on any outing for a while, her way of saying she got it without making it a spectacle. I said yes, and I thanked her for handling things with care. Then, because I couldn't stand living in the shadows of other people's stories, I asked the other mom to meet me for coffee. I didn't know how that conversation would go or if it would blow everything up, but I also couldn't keep building an entire world in my head based on sideways glances and jokes other people made when I wasn't around. She showed up in running shoes and a hoodie, hair in a ponytail, not dressed for war, just for Saturday morning. I told her right away that I wasn't there to accuse her of anything. I told her what my husband had told me, that he'd felt attraction, set boundaries, kept things to scouting and books, and never put himself alone in a room with her. She held my eyes and said, "I know." Then she pulled out her phone and scrolled to an email she'd sent the Scoutmaster last fall, asking to add a third leader to any overnight trips for optics and comfort. I recognized the Scoutmaster's reply below it, grateful, efficient, like she always is. "I didn't want to create drama," the other mom said. "I didn't want my marriage to be fodder, and I didn't want your marriage to be either." She told me something I didn't expect. She said she'd clocked the jokes early and hated them, but the troop was dangling by a thread in terms of adult coverage. She said my husband always kept a kind distance. He was careful, she said. He never lingered. He waited in the driveway. He would find an extra dad for a weeknight thing if it looked like it might end up just the two of us. Then she apologized, softly, without defensiveness, for not pulling me in sooner and forever sitting with him at meals when it made the jokes louder. "I am sorry for any part of this that landed on you," she said, and I didn't realize until that moment how much I needed to hear someone else take a sliver of the weight. I told her about my own cracks, the Facebook ad I shouldn't have sent, the way my brain went feral when I felt unsafe. She shook her head and said, "We're all human." She looked tired when she said it, the kind of tired I recognize in the mirror. She didn't say a word against my husband. She didn't flirt with the truth, didn't add sugar or salt. We talked about our kids and about the new pilot program and about how, if we're going to build something good for them, the adults have to be boringly transparent. Before we left, she said, it wasn't an affair, and for the first time since this started, I didn't feel the need to argue with that sentence. That afternoon, I told my husband I'd met with her. He looked panicked for a second, then relieved when I told him what she'd shown me. He said he'd never seen the email, but he remembered the fallout from a camp last summer when those old married couple comments were still fresh. He said he'd asked another dad to drive in at 9 o'clock at night because a tent tore and the only adults left awake were him and her. The other dad showed up with duct tape and beef jerky and a folding chair, and they sat in a triangle in the dark. It felt ridiculous at the time, he said. But it feels less ridiculous now. We had our first session with a marriage counselor this morning. We both cried, which feels so cliché to type and also exactly true. She talked about walls and windows, the idea that you keep a wall up around your marriage and only open windows between you and your spouse, and how anything that shifts a window outward, even in thought, needs to be closed, named, and owned. She didn't shame either of us. She asked my husband to tell me, in detail, the exact moment attraction turned into a fantasy and what he did right after. He said he'd taken a longer shower than he should have, and then he said he deleted a photo from his camera roll that she was in even though it was just a group picture at a picnic table, because he didn't want to keep feeding that loop. He said it out loud. I didn't like hearing it, but I appreciated that he didn't flinch from the ugly parts now that we'd dragged this thing into the light. After the session, we drove to the library and checked out Not Just Friends. We made a rule, no reading ahead, no pretending we're fine to prevent the other from feeling bad. We sat on opposite ends of the couch and read the first chapter at the same time, Like two dumb teenagers passing notes, interrupting each other every few pages with a "does this feel familiar?" We didn't have sex that night. Instead, he fell asleep with his hand on my ankle, and I watched his chest rise and fall and felt, in this very small way, like we'd picked up a stitch we had dropped. And then last night, the parent I added on Facebook messaged me for the first time since I sent the request. Nothing charged. Just a link to a fundraiser and a smiley face. It still sent that unhelpful little thrill straight through me. I told my husband immediately. He listened, didn't gloat, didn't use it to level the playing field. He asked what I wanted to do. I blocked the message thread and unfriended him. I felt childish doing it and also very clean. My husband didn't say good job. He just slid his phone across the table and said, "You can delete her number if you want," and I did. We know where to find each other if the troop needs something. The Scoutmaster can be our conduit for a while. That feels right. My sister stopped by with a bottle of wine and the kind of grin that announces trouble before it speaks it. I told her I wasn't interested in rewriting the rules of my marriage. I told her I wasn't broken. She said I'd regret being a martyr. I told her it wasn't martyrdom to choose a line and hold it. She left the wine on the counter and told me to call if I wanted a fun night. I love her. I can't use her version of what love should look like to build my own. There's more work ahead. There always was. My husband wrote a short statement for the troop group chat about stepping back, and he asked me to read it before he sent it. He didn't mention me or her or the word rumors. He thanked everyone for the last few years and said he looked forward to camping as a parent when the time felt right. Within minutes, a different dad volunteered for the next outing, and one of the new leaders made a joke about overpacking granola bars and no one made the old joke. It was small, it felt bigger than it was. Update 7. Sunday afternoon folded itself into a kind of calm and then tore right down the middle. Our daughter came into the kitchen with that particular, brittle look kids get when they've seen something they don't know what to do with. "Mom," she said, holding up her phone, "why is there a picture of Dad and Ms. K sitting together with a caption that says the old ball and chain?" It was a photo from last spring's jamboree, clearly lifted from someone's camera roll and tossed up on the troop Facebook page with a casual, lazy joke. I could see the long picnic table, paper plates, sunburned noses. There were 8 people in the shot. They just happened to be next to each other. I told her we'd handle it. I messaged the Scoutmaster and the leader who posted it. The Scoutmaster took it down in under 5 minutes and texted me, "I'm sorry. I didn't catch it before it went live." The leader sent a week didn't think it was a big deal and got a firm reply from the Scoutmaster about optics, respect, and how we aren't doing bits about people's marriages. It felt like someone finally turned the volume down on a radio that had been blaring in the next room for too long. We brought our daughter into the living room and told her a version of the truth we could stand behind. That sometimes adults think they're being funny when they're actually being careless, and that Dad and Ms. K have been careful on purpose, and that we won't be participating in jokes at anyone's expense. She asked if Dad was in trouble. He said yes, with a small smile, but the kind where trouble means you're more careful with someone else's heart, not that you're grounded. She nodded like she was filing that definition away for later. An hour after the photo went up and down, I got an email with no subject line from a name I didn't recognize. It was Ms. K's husband. He wrote that he'd heard there was noise around the troop and wanted to talk, not to accuse, but because he was worried their kids would end up catching shrapnel. He suggested the coffee shop by the hardware store at 5, if that doesn't feel like an ambush. I almost didn't go. I did anyway. He showed up in a Carhartt jacket, clean-shaven, the kind of tall that makes door frames look shorter. He didn't order anything. He said hi like we'd met at a school concert once in passing. Then he told me they'd been living separately since late summer. Not a dramatic lawyer-up situation, just 2 adults who couldn't get back to a road they used to be on. He said he hated that he wasn't around for concerts and banquets, that the kids had asked 100 times where he was and he had run out of good answers. He said he wasn't angry at my husband. He was angry at how fast a joke can become a knife if you're not paying attention. "I should have been there," he said, and his hands shook just once when he folded them. "If I had been, they would have sat with me, and people would have made a different joke. Or none at all." I told him about the email Ms. K had sent the Scoutmaster for a 3rd adult last fall. He looked like someone had let out the air in his chest. "She didn't tell me that," he said, and then, softer, "That sounds like her." We talked about logistics, how a counselor advised him to stay off school property until their youngest had a better handle on the separation, how he stood at the far end of the soccer field last month and waved and no one noticed. He asked if he could send me anything he hears that might affect our kids. I gave him my number. He didn't ask for anything back. On the way home I pulled into the empty middle school parking lot and stared at the white lines until I remembered how to breathe like a person and not a paper bag. Then I texted my husband, "I'm coming home." I met him. He's not a villain. He wrote back, "Okay. Do you want to drive?" He knows I don't have a license. He keeps asking like it's already true. That night we made a deal at our kitchen table without a therapist to referee it. If I take the online course this week and pass the written test on Friday, he'll book me actual lessons with a patient human who isn't my spouse. He set orange cones in the trunk like a promise. We laughed at how ridiculous it was to be doing this at 42 and 42, and I felt something bright crack open in me that wasn't anger. On Monday I signed up for youth protection training and a background check. It was late by the time I finished the modules, and when the video talked about barriers to abuse in the most practical, unglamorous way, I thought about the wall and window metaphor from our counselor, how so much of protecting kids and protecting marriages is boring on purpose. I printed the certificate and stuck it to the fridge even though no one required me to. The next day, the scoutmaster asked if I'd be willing to help on the blue and gold banquet committee. I said yes before I remembered how those things devour your evenings. I meant it anyway. The rumor fire burned itself down in the strangest way. One of the new leaders, she's a nurse in real life, the kind who does triage like other people make sandwiches, offered to run a parents' 101 night for volunteers, a quick and dirty on being clear, prepared, and never alone with someone else's kid. She asked if I'd say a few words about why optics matter, since I work with families every day. I stood in front of a circle of folding chairs and talked about the thing the training modules don't cover, how respect is something you build in 100 tiny public choices. How sitting at a different end of the table can be a love letter to your spouse. No one argued. One of the dads asked if he should stop giving side hugs. Depends on the person, the nurse said, and it broke the tension the way good humor does. After, Ms. K and I walked out together to the curb and watched a line of minivans blink their hazard lights. She said, "He told me he met you," and I nodded. We didn't wade into their marriage. That isn't mine to narrate. She did tell me that she's looking for a day camp for her youngest the week of spring break so she can work. I sent her a list of options that night and realized I had let my own defensiveness take up space where generosity used to live. That felt like a win I didn't know how to tally. We had our second counseling session this morning. More crying, less explaining. Our therapist asked us to write each other a tiny script we could use in public, a single sentence that says, "I see you, I'm with you, and we're good," without turning it into a performative apology tour. We landed on a ridiculous one that works. He'll touch his shoulder, I'll touch my wrist. It sounds like nothing. It feels like the opposite. In the afternoon, we drove to the high school lot with the cones rattling in the back and the kind of low winter sun that makes everything look like a spilled glass of honey. He set them up in a lopsided rectangle and stood there with his hands in his pockets while I slid behind the wheel. I lurched, braked too hard, lurched again. He didn't say a word until I asked him to. When he did, it was just this: "You're doing fine. Check your mirrors." I did. I could see us, small and moving, in 3 different reflections. Tonight, after the kids were in bed, he brought out the library copy of Not Just Friends and a stack of sticky notes. We read a little and then didn't read it all. He told me, with a steadiness I didn't realize I'd been waiting for, that he has been thinking about how to make our life smaller in the ways that count and bigger in the ways that matter. Fewer campouts for now. More orange cones. Less banter with people who aren't us. More movie nights that end with my foot tucked under his thigh and his hand on my ankle, like an old superstition you don't even know you believe in until it works. I went upstairs later and unblocked no one, friended no one. My phone felt quiet in my palm in a way that read as safety, not silence. I brushed my teeth and looked, by accident, exactly like my sister when I put my hair up, and I smiled at the mirror without having to douse it in explanation. Downstairs, my husband started the dishwasher and then turned, almost sheepish, and said, "Do you want to drive us to the grocery store parking lot?"